Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 253. And today's date is January 2nd, 2014. And the title of this episode is The Government is Coming for Your Guns, Taxes, and Your Rights. And I just want to welcome everyone back. I hope everyone had a happy new year. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, previously I talked about how the government, and this was in past reports, how the government was modifying student loans for college graduates. And the reason why they have to do this is because most of the college graduates can't find jobs today. And the rate is anywhere between 20 and 35%. Most of the college graduates are finding part-time work. They're living with their parents, or they can't find work at all, so they can't pay off this heavy debt load. So they're modifying and allowing these students to go longer before they make payments. So right now, there is a bill being introduced by Elizabeth Warren, Jack Reed, Dick Durbin, and what they're trying to do is have colleges pay for those students who are defaulting on their student loans, because what the government is realizing is that since these youths coming out of college, they can't find work and they have no money coming in. So a lot of them are defaulting on their student loans, and that means they're not getting the interest on the loans and they're losing money. So now they want colleges to say, hey, you educated these people, now they can't find jobs, so you're going to have to take the blame for this, and we're going to have you pay for the defaulting student. And this goes on to say that the Student Borrowers Bill of Rights, that would put more emphasis on getting services to offer students affordable repayment plans. The senators want schools with lots of struggling borrowers to compensate the government for loan repayment losses. The proposal would force schools to pay a penalty along a sliding scale based on how frequently students default on their loans. And you know what's going to happen here. If this actually goes through, colleges are going to raise prices, students are going to be put into more debt, and this will never end because, again, when a government has massive amount of debt, they can't bring in the revenue to cover the interest on this, that even if the interest rates are at record time lows, they still can't meet the revenue that they need. So they start to look for money anywhere they can. They impose more laws, they try to get more taxes, and they look all around the world to find this hidden money. And this is the end game, and this is what they end up doing every single time. Now, the end of 2013, Congress is going to allow 55 tax breaks to expire. Why? Because it will bring in more revenue. So they're getting rid of the tax breaks, and they want more revenue, and they want to charge you more taxes, and this is an easy way of doing it because they said, you know what, we didn't implement new laws, we just let them expire, and we really didn't do anything. And they need to do this, just like in France. They're imposing the 75% tax on the millionaires, but that's going to trickle down, and pretty soon they'll say, oh, that wasn't enough money because now we just took on more debt, so now we have to do 75% on those who are making $500,000, 75% making $250,000, and this is how it works. And they're doing the same thing here in the U.S. They are looking everywhere for money, and they need the money in order to keep everything operating. And this is why FACTA is going into effect, where they can go across into other countries and find the money. They can go into Switzerland, and they want those banks to report those people who have money in those banks so they can charge them and get taxes for it. FACTA, for those people who have a U.S. passport but work outside of the U.S., they are going to be taxed. There is a bill right now floating around the U.S. Congress where if you decide to turn in your passport and you want to leave the country, they're going to take 30% of your wealth. This is all being done to capture and to collect as much money as they possibly can before everything completely collapses, because they believe if they continually do this, they will be able to keep the system going. But this from if you just look at a at your household. If you have a certain amount of money coming in and you have huge amounts of debt, yes, you can sell off your TV, you can sell off your car, you can sell off everything, but as you continually pile up debt, you run out of things to sell, you run out of things to bring in money, and eventually what happens? You declare bankruptcy. And this is what's going to happen to the U.S. government. There is no way out of this. And people say, well, they can print money, they can keep printing. Yeah, as they keep printing, guess what? They keep adding to the debt. That means more interest payments. And as less revenue comes in, they have to increase the amount that they're borrowing, and as they increase the amount they're borrowing, the interest payments get larger and larger and larger, and the debt continually rises at a faster and faster pace. And we have all seen the graphs that the debt has increased in the last, since 2008, an incredibly a huge amount compared to everything before 2008, going all the way back to 1913. So we can see what is happening, and going forward, the debt's going to it's going to multiply as time goes on, and before you know it, they'll be printing so much and so fast that it'll be just like the Weimar Republic, where things just get completely out of hand and they cannot stop it. Okay, now, we understand that Obamacare is a cash grab. They have taxes within Obamacare, there are penalties, and there is one doctor, and you might have seen the video already, but I just want to read what she said. This is Dr. Bellars. She wrote a one sentence of what Obamacare is, and this is what she said. We're going to be gifted with a health care plan we are forced to purchase and fined if we don't, which purportedly covers at least 10 million more people without adding a single new doctor, but provides for 60,000 new IRS agents, written by a committee whose chairman says he doesn't understand it, passed by a Congress that didn't read it, but exempted themselves from it, and signed by a president who smokes, with a funding administered by a Treasury chief who didn't pay his taxes, for which we will be taxed for 4 years before any benefits take effect by the government, which has already bankrupted Social Security and Medicare, all to be overseen by a Surgeon General who is obese and financed by a country that is broke. And she pretty much summed up exactly what Obamacare is. This law that they put into place, of course they used the NSA spying and blackmailed some judges, and they put it in place to collect taxes from the people, to give money to the insurance companies. This is all this is. This is not to help the everyday American person. This is to take from them more money. And they need to do this, and this is why this was pushed through. This is why Congress was not allowed to read it, and this is why they were forced to pass it. And this is why, when they went and they looked at it, they exempted everybody, and Obama had to bail out the staffers who said, hey, we can't afford this. This is too expensive. We don't have money for this. So Obama said, oh, don't worry about that. We'll pay for it for you. But who's going to pay for all the Americans who say, listen, I can't afford this, and my deductibles are way too high, and if I don't take it, I'm taxed. So, you look at this and you know it is not for the people. And right now, Obamacare results, there are more canceled plans that outnumber the amount of people that are enrolling in Obamacare. More Americans have lost their coverage than those who enrolled in Obamacare. At least 4.7 million people have lost their insurance coverage to date. As of yesterday, only 2 million customers signed up for Obamacare. And what they're going to find out is that this health insurance that they signed up for doesn't do a thing for them, because the deductibles are so high. You need to meet the deductibles first before the insurance actually kicks in, but you still have to pay the monthly premium. So you're not going to see any benefit from the insurance. Why do you think Congress completely exempted themselves? Why do you think Obama didn't drop his governmental insurance? Because this insurance sucks. That's why, and they know it. Now, the government right now, and especially in the very populated areas where they are very worried about the collapse and what is going to happen in these cities. And that's why in D.C., Chicago, New York City, California, L.A., all these areas, we are seeing gun confiscation. And of course, the new year um, enacts the laws that were passed, and right now, people need to go in and register their guns. And a federal judge in Buffalo, New York, upheld most of New York's new gun laws Tuesday, rejecting a challenge that the tight restrictions violated the Second Amendment. But I'm sorry, but the Second Amendment, anything that infringes upon your right to bear arms, is a restriction on the Second Amendment, because infringe means to limit. I'm sorry, if you're limiting my magazine, you're infringing on my right. And right now in Washington, D.C., the first law in U.S. to require renewal with fingerprints and fees. For the first time in the United States, a citizen who has legally registered a gun will have to submit to a renewal process. This consequences of not knowing about this new law or missing the specific 60-day window are dire. Starting on January 2nd, every single D.C. resident who has registered a firearm since 1976 must go to a police headquarters to pay a $48 fee and be photographed and fingerprinted. The city has not made it clear how they're going to enforce this law, but don't worry. The police are in possession of all the registrant's home address, so confiscation and arrest would be very simple for them. And I'm going to tell you right now, when the gun confiscation time comes across the country, because you know that the Dianne Feinstein and the UN Arms Treaty bill are still pending in the Senate. Obama has already has the executive orders for the UN Arms Treaty and 23 executive orders supporting Dianne Feinstein's gun bill. They are ready to go. You will see something happen, a false flag or something else happen, where they will be able to pass these gun laws because they need to disarm the people. And people say, well, how are they going to get everyone's gun? That's ridiculous. 80% of the people, they already know, are going to march in to those police stations saying that this gun has more than 7 rounds or 5 rounds or 10 rounds of bullets, and here you go. And they are going to do this, no questions asked. Then the government has to worry about the remaining 20%. And this is where they want you to register. This is where they're going to have your address. This is where they're going to know where all of you live to come, and myself included, to come and get the guns when the time comes. Believe me, this is coming. You can just see it. The writing is on the wall. So what else are we seeing? Well, your rights are being taken away. We already had a judge, a federal judge, of course, that said, no, the NSA spying is completely legal. It's okay. It has nothing to do with the Fourth Amendment that they're collecting all your information. And now another U.S. federal judge has reaffirmed an Obama administration policy granting officials the authority to search Americans' laptops, citing a controversial premise that makes citizens within 100 miles of the border eligible for a police check. So most of you have probably seen the map already, where they have the outline of the United States, and from the coast in 100 miles, and that's, guess what? Most of the major cities. Those are in constitutional free zones where the Constitution doesn't apply. Understand what's happening here? And what has happened already, the ACLU has filed suit, and of course the district judge, Edward Corman, made his ruling that no, this is fine, it's okay, this is allowed to be like this, and they are arguing that that this violates the Fourth Amendment. These can't be unconstitutional zones because you're in the United States, and it completely goes against the Constitution itself. Now, during this time, the Department of Homeland Security has been setting up around 33 checkpoints inside the country where people are stopped and asked to prove their citizenship, and more is on the way, because these are constitutional free zones. So they believe that they can start setting up these checkpoints throughout this area, which is the border of the United States, and they'll be setting them up. And we can see why and how the Real ID, which I reported on about 2 reports ago, how they're going to use this information on your license, where it's going to be transmitted to every single state and outside into Canada and to Mexico, where they will have checkpoints and they'll run your information through a system to make sure that you are able to pass through. And we're going to see this happen more and more. And this 33 is going to turn into 66. It's going to turn into 99. And before you know it, we're going to have thousands upon thousands of checkpoints. But the problem here is that this is all null and void according to the Constitution. We, the people, control our rights, not the federal judge, not the government. We actually dictate to the government that these are our rights, and they are there as secretaries to follow them, not to make up and enforce their own agendas on the people. And we can see what is happening right now. Congress, the Obama administration, has the lowest approval rating. The people of the United States, and there are polls out there showing they do not trust the government. They believe the government is the source of the problem. And as the government keeps pushing and pushing the people, the approval rating for Congress and the administration is going to get lower and lower, and they're going to start looking at the government as more and more as being the problem. And as this continually builds up, this is where all of a sudden you see people speaking out, and it's starting, and they start realizing, oh, what is this, the Patriot Act? What is this, the NDAA? What is this? What do you mean we're in a constitutional free zone and you can just check and search through my belongings? This is going to blow up in their face, and they believe by putting all this police forces around, they're going to be able to control the people. Yes, most of the people will be controlled. Those aren't the people they're worried about. They're worried about those people who they're creating the list for, the 20%ers. That's what they're worried about, and this is why they have the NSA spying. This is why they have facial recognition. This is why they're putting you on different lists of who's going to be a problem. The 80% that turn in their weapons, they're not going to do anything. The 20% that keep their weapons and have more weapons than the government knows of, that's where the problem's going to be. The people that revolt, the people that say no, no more, we are tired of this, that is who the government is going after. Now, Michael Horowitz is the Inspector General at the Justice Department, and he's asking the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, many, many questions, and he wants to know how many drones the FBI has. Well, and he demanded this information with hard numbers of drone flights, and he wants all the supporting documentation. And guess what? The FBI can't give the documentation. They don't know how many drones they have, and the only thing they've handed over right now is that they've been using drones since 1999. And we can see what they're doing. They're stalling because they really don't want to give this type of information to anyone. Okay. Now, in North Korea, we are seeing the propaganda build up again, and we see the leader, Kim Jong-un, is warning the U.S. That if there is some type of conflict, that he's going to use some type of nuclear weapons. And if you notice, the government always provokes the nations that do not have a private Western central bank. If you notice, we see this with North Korea, we see it with Iran, we see it with Syria, we see it with Russia, we see it with China. All of these nations that do not use a private Western central bank is the enemy of the central bankers. And this is why they're always provoking them. They want them to do something. They want these countries to make the first move so they can declare war. They want them, and they will continue to provoke all of these countries. Now, the Department of Defense is saying that their primary goal is is to take the man out of unmanned combat. All the drones that you see, and I'm talking about air, land, water, they want these to be killbots. And in a document created by the Department of Defense, it lays out a few concrete rules beyond of what they need to do to create these type of killing machines. And these will be on land, they will be at sea, and they will be in the skies. And of course, one of the rules is to rigorously test these unmanned devices. And they're also making it a point that the robots should not start indiscriminately killing civilians upon losing a connection to the command center. To me, that is kind of scary, where that is one of their requirements, where the system should not go off and just start killing people if it loses connections. And how are they going to be sure that it does what it wants it to do, that nobody can hack into these unmanned devices and make them kill? Here we have to be very, very careful of what is going on, because we've all seen the movie Terminator, at least I have. Now, the Department of Defense is prioritizing the unmanned systems, and of course, it means land, air, sea. But what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to get the air done by 2014. By the end of 2014. They're trying to push this through, and they want to see if they can get a working model of an unmanned drone to fly around. And then after that, it's going to be the maritime, and then the ground is going to be last. Now, I've talked about this a lot. We know that World War III is eventually going to happen here, because we can see the United States pivoting to Asia. We can see China making preparation. We see Japan making its military move. We see the missile shield across Europe. We see Russia putting up their missile shield to counter the missile shield in Europe. We see Russia, the US, Canada making their move into the Arctic, setting up bases, trying to get to the natural resources. We see this happening all around the world. And right now, China is considering reorganizing its 7 military regions into 5 in a bid to respond more swiftly to a crisis. And each of the new military regions will create a joint operations command that controls the Army, Navy, and Air Force, as well as a strategic missile unit. It is a proactive measure with eyes on counteracting the Japan-U.S. alliance. And we can see what is happening right now. And the Japanese people understand that war is coming. Abe understands this. This is why the U.S. is on Japan, in Okinawa, setting up and moving out of that base, creating a new base, which they're going to put more advanced weaponry on the base. And right now, Prime Minister Abe said on Wednesday that now is the time for the Japanese people to make a major step toward creating a new nation. Sounds like a new world order, but this is what he's saying, and that he's saying that he needs the people of Japan need to revise the pacifist constitution. They need to enhance security policies. They need to reform the education system. And right now, he wants deeper discussion on revising the Constitution to deal with the changing times, as nearly 7 decades have passed since it was adopted. And he said, we no longer can be a pacifist nation because of what is happening with China. We need the ability to attack. And in my last report, we understand that they are on the road to creating a nuclear weapon, because we understand that most of these nations are going to need a nuclear weapon in their arsenal to combat what is coming. And eventually, World War III will end up in a nuclear attack, because there's no other way for this actually to end. Now, will this war happen tomorrow? Most likely not. Will there be builds-up, skirmishes, And you'll see how it unfolds. Just like in every single war, it just doesn't turn on one day and you see missiles flying. Something happens, it starts to build up, it gets out of hand, it moves into another country, then into another country, and then before you know it, we are in World War III. Now, in San Francisco, the Chinese consulate was on fire, and the FBI is investigating right now. And they're saying that there was a man, they've caught him on film, and it looks like he was in front of the consulate, and he threw something on the building and lit it on fire. And the Chinese are very upset right now, and they're urging U.S. authorities to launch an immediate investigation against this. And we can see what is happening right now. Most likely they'll probably never find this person because this is probably done by the FBI to provoke China. It was done by the U.S. government because they're just every so often they're provoking all these different countries because they want to get them a little angry and pissed off because they want something to get started. Now we can see the propaganda in the United States is actually working because we can see every time the news, the corporate media comes out and says, hey, there was a cyber attack. It was blamed on the Chinese. Oh, Iran has nuclear weapons, and they've been saying this for 30 years, and they're going to have a nuclear bomb, 3 to 5 months from now, and this has been going on for 30 years. And North Korea, they're going to attack any second, and we can see this is absolutely working on the American people because what they've done is they've done a survey on the American people, and right now 75% of Americans said that extremist groups like Al-Qaeda pose a major threat to the U.S. because what have we been seeing lately? We've been seeing the Al-Qaeda threat growing, becoming lone wolves. They're out there. We don't know where they are. Bomb makers are being shipped in from the north across the Canadian border. We see out in Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Libya, Al-Qaeda out there growing, becoming more advanced, saying that they're going to move their attacks into the U.S. And they're continually growing this, and this is why the American people actually believe this, because they're getting ready for the next false flag event. And what we're seeing right now is that 7 in 10 say that cyber warfare represents a major threat to the country. Well, of course, in 2.5 years of propaganda saying that these cyber threats are coming from China, Iran, Syria, North Korea, and we have Hagel out there, we have Janet Napolitano out there saying that these cyber threats can hit the power grid, bring down the water supply, bring down the electrical grid, hit financial institutions. We see banks being continually attacked, and they are building and building this up, so when the time comes, everyone believes in their propaganda. And this goes on to say that 68% say Iran's nuclear program was a major threat to the well-being of the U.S. 67% of Americans were also very concerned about North Korea's nuclear program, and 54% see China's emergence as a world power as a major threat. So we can see the propaganda is actually working, and they are building and building this up. And if you notice, all of these countries are those countries that have no private Western central bank. They do not sell their natural resources using the U.S. dollar. And guess what? They are then the enemy of the central bankers. Now, to push their agenda forward and have people believe, all of a sudden, the Syrian Electronic Army hacks Skype saying, "Stop spying on the people." The Syrian Electronic Army has kicked off the new year with a number of cyber attacks. Now, isn't it strange that, of course, Syria doesn't have a private Western central bank. They don't sell their oil using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. I mean, the U.S. has spied on France, Germany, England, many other countries, Australia. How come we don't see any group there hacking in and saying, "Stop spying on us"? But we see one from a country that the central bankers really want to get into. Interesting. And this goes on to say the Syrian Electronic Army claimed responsibility for hacking a number of Western media outlets, including the New York Times, Washington Post, the Huffington Post, Thomson Reuters, Their biggest success was the penetration of the Associated Press Twitter account that posted President Barack Obama had been injured in a White House attack. And we can see that they're pushing this agenda forward. They are building it up so they believe that the Syrian people are attacking the U.S. because when the time comes for the false flag event, it will make it very easy for them to say, listen, remember back then when CNN reported, and of course CNN will come out and say this, we had intel that Assad was hiding a cache of chemical weapons, and we reported on this back a couple months ago. Well, here they are. They attacked, New York, Chicago, L.A., Miami, Houston, Dallas, whatever city, and they will refer back to that, and it will make every single American go, oh yeah, I remember this. Oh yeah, this is what they've been telling us, because they are brainwashing everyone to believe that this is what's going to happen. And of course, they have to do this false flag event because the American people don't really care what happens inside other countries. They care what happens inside the U.S. And if another country actually attacks the U.S. within its borders, that is a problem for Americans, and most of the Americans will say, let's go get them. And this is what the central bankers, U.S. government, actually want. Now, Al-Qaeda right now, and we can see what is happening here. Al-Qaeda is threatening to assassinate an Iranian military leader. Now, when I was reading this report, I remembered back. Remember the peace deal with Iran. Remember the Revolutionary Guard and the generals coming out saying to Rouhani, be careful here. You're slipping. We see what the Western countries are doing. We know what's going on. And if you go any further, something might happen, where there could be some type of civil war within the country. The Revolutionary Guard might, go ahead and do something. Right now, Al-Qaeda said that it is planning to assassinate Iran's top military general, underscoring tensions in the rocky relationship between Tehran and global terror networks. Al-Qaeda claimed in a recent statement to have sent 2 of its terrorist forces into Iran with the goal of killing Qasem Soleimani, the general of Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard. And we can see what is happening right now. Something will and something is definitely going to happen, because the Revolutionary Guard and the new President Rouhani are not on the same page with this peace deal. They see that the Western central bankers are trying to infiltrate the central bank of Iran, where they are taking control of setting interest rates, and eventually they are going to try to move in and take control of putting their oil using the U.S. dollar. And this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to move in and do this. The Revolutionary Guard is saying, hey, be careful here. Let's watch what they're doing, and if we see something, we're going to do something here. And this report goes on to say that Iranian sources went on to blame the West for pitting Al-Qaeda against Iran. So we can see this is turning into a setup right now. Now, Bolton is saying that all Americans need to be on guard right now. And he goes on to say that terrorists could target sporting events in the United States before the Sochi Olympics in Russia in February. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton warned Tuesday, I suspect that law enforcement and intelligence in this country are focused on risk that Chechen terrorists might try to one-up the Boston Marathon bombing in this country as a prelude to the Sochi Olympics. Bolton said Americans should bring situational awareness of the potential for terrorist attacks to any sporting events that draw a large number of people, either in the United States or abroad. Bolton explained that the factions fighting in Russia goes back centuries. Russian extremists would view the Olympics as a real opportunity to get their message out worldwide. When the entire world's attention is focused on Sochi, it's a perfect opportunity for Chechens and other terrorists to use it to attack the United States. So we can see that something is in the works. They keep letting us know that we are going to be attacked by terrorists. And They are trying to drill this into every American's mind, so when the time comes, it is an easy case to prove that it was another country. And there is a report because, and I don't know why the government is doing this. It could be one or two reasons. The U.S. government orders about 14 million doses of potassium iodide. The Department of Health and Human Services ordered the 14 million doses. This compound protects the body from radioactive poisoning in the aftermath of a severe nuclear accident, to be delivered before the beginning of February of 2014. So they want this. They want the potassium iodide delivered before February 1st, 2014. Now, is this because of Fukushima, because of the radiation leak, or are they expecting some type of dirty nuclear bomb to go off someplace in the U.S.? This is the question. Why are they ordering this? What is the purpose of this? And this is what we need to be prepared for, and we can see they are plotting, scheming, getting ready for the next event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.